You are probably still in shock that Iron Mike lost a fight to a YouTuber. To be honest, I think that might not even be his biggest problem. The Warrior used to be invincible, but now he's getting beat up because of bad choices he made a few years ago. Now that we know these terrible new facts, things are getting worse for Mike Tyson. After his fight with Jake Paul, didn't feel bad about losing their heavyweight boxing match, which he called one last time in the ring, and which was seen by over 72,000 fans and an extra 60 million homes around the world. As of now, the 58-year-old former world heavyweight champion might never fight again. Fans will never forget how unbeatable Mike Tyson was after this loss. Many people think that Mike's terrible boxing performance made this loss even worse. They also think that Jake Paul is to blame because he seemed to enjoy being called the bad guy in this sad story. But even though everyone is mad at everything Mike said on X, this is one of those times when you lost but still won. I'm thankful for last night. I don't feel bad about getting in the ring. The last time I had my children see me stand toe-to-toe and finish 8 rounds with a skilled fighter half my age in front of a packed Dallas Cowboys stadium was an experience that no man has the right to. Then he dropped this detail. I almost died in June. Had 8 blood transfers, lost half my blood and 25 pounds in the hospital, and had to fight to get healthy to fight, so I won. As a number of fans know, the Jake Paul vs. Mike Tyson boxing match was postponed after Mike's medical emergency after he supposedly got better. Mike said, "I want to thank my friends around the world for their support and understanding during this time. Unfortunately, due to my ulcer flare-up, I have been told by my doctor to lighten my training for a few weeks. Now, with the fight done and dusted, people are asking more questions, with many wondering if Iron Mike is suffering from a terminal illness or if this whole fight was just a scam to make everyone involved some money. And you can understand people's reaction given who Mike was and the form he showed in the weeks leading up to the fight. Literally, when you talk about fighting, you think of Mike Tyson, the boy from Brooklyn, who was famous for his powerful blows and unrivaled. He single-handedly changed what boxing was despite his difficult childhood to become the youngest heavyweight champion and one of the greatest ever. Born on June 30, 1966, Iron Mike was born in Brooklyn's Fort Greene, New York City. His mother, Lorna Mae Tyson, was a loose woman who may have been a worker. The man whom Mike had known as his father was a pimp named Jimmy Kirkpatrick, but his birth certificate names his true father as P. Cell Tyson, humble cab driver from Jamaica. But Mike's father wasn't a humble cab driver. After relocating to Brooklyn, Kirkpatrick met Mike's mother while he was gambling, hanging out on the streets, and going to pool halls. He eventually abandoned his family around the time Mike was born, leaving Lorna to care for the children. According to Mike, his father was just a regular street guy caught up in the street world. When Mike was 10 years old, the family had to relocate to Brown due to financial difficulties, having previously stayed in Bedford. These early years had Mike living in high-crime districts, and by the time he turned 13, he had gotten arrested 38 times. Sometimes he would get arrested for fighting people who made fun of his lisp and high-pitched voice. He had fought a bigger guy who tore the head off his pigeon. Other times, he was arrested for committing small-time offenses like stealing. But before Mike would be forever lost to the ravenous beast called the streets, he found himself at the Tron School for Boys, and it was Bobby Stewart, a counselor at a juvenile correctional institution and former boxer, who saw Mike's potential as a boxer. He began training and was able to participate at the Junior Olympic Games in the early 80s, winning gold both times. He won gold again at the Golden Gloves in New York, but it wasn't a smooth road to wins for young Mike as an amateur. He lost both of his fights against Henry Tillman by decision at the '84 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. Stewart continued to train Mike, but later brought him to boxing manager and trainer Cus D'Amato, a legend in the fighting world at the time. At this point, the young boy had dropped out of high school while he was still under D'Amato. Mike's mom passed away, and he was only 16 at the time, so D'Amato became his formal guardian. After his mom's death, he said, "My mother only knew me as a crazy kid roving the streets and coming home with new clothing that she knew I didn't buy. I never saw her happy or proud of me for an accomplishment. I never knew about her or had the chance to speak with her. Although it has no impact on a professional level, it is devastating on an emotional and personal level." He was deeply affected by the loss of his mother's approval and the chance to connect with her. He experienced a childhood that was marked by a lack of understanding and connection, and this led young Mike to have a totally different outlook on life and his career. To him, boxing was more than simply a sport. To him, as a child growing up in a rough Brooklyn area, it was his escape. His rise in the sport was driven more by survival than by his love for boxing. And the way D'Amato used this was very brilliant. Instead of trying to hold back the young man's anger and rage, D'Amato showed Mike how to control it. D'Amato was training Mike beyond the usual boxing routine. His goal wasn't to produce a champion, but to change a troubled young man. So he was teaching his student the importance of strategic thinking and mental discipline, making them just as important as the physical exercises he was doing. The effect was that Mike was deliberate in every move and every punch he delivered. These lessons made Mike a boxing sensation, starting with his professional debut at age 18, when he won via TKO in the first round against Hector Mercedes. In that debut year as a professional, fought in 15 fights. As if that wasn't impressive enough, he won 26 of his first 28 bouts via knockout or TKO, with 16 of those victories coming in the opening round. Mike was a real monster. Yes, you would expect that he started by fighting new average fighters like himself. But thanks to the way he was winning those fights, his opponents quickly included borderline candidates like James Tillis, David Jacko, Jesse Ferguson, Mitch Green, and Marvis were praising him as the next great heavyweight champion after his winning streak got media attention. However, something terrible was about to derail Mike's growing career. Sadly, D'Amato soon passed away from pneumonia, leaving the 19-year-old heartbroken and alone. Some people think that D'Amato's death in November 1985 was so early in Mike's professional career that it caused many of the issues the young fighter would face later in life and in his career. But Mike started to collapse. He was destroying his opponents. Soon, the 5'11" boxer was nicknamed the Kid Dynamite, a name he rightly earned after he faced former world championship contender Marvis Frazier in Glens Falls, New York. A fight he won just after charging at Frazier at the opening bell and landing 2 straight HT uppercuts, the second of which sent Frazier unconscious just 30 seconds into the fight. The referee in charge of the match immediately knew it was pointless counting to 10 and just stopped the fight. He later remarked, "I could have counted to 20, and he wouldn't have gotten up." That same year, Mike fought for the World Boxing Council heavyweight title against Trevor Berbick. He won the title by TKO in the second round at the age of 20 years and 4 months, becoming the youngest heavyweight winner in history. The following year, he beat Tony Tucker and James Smith to add the WBA and IBF belts, and James Smith in Las Vegas, Nevada, to defend his title, adding Smith's World Boxing Association Championship to his already existing belt after winning by unanimous decision. This put him in a favored position to win the Heavyweight Unification Series, a competition designed to create an undisputed heavyweight champion, and expectations were quite high. He was the first heavyweight to simultaneously win the WBA, WBC, and IBF titles. In October of the same year, he defeated Tyrell Biggs, the 1984 Olympic super heavyweight gold champion, via TKO in the something round in another fight in the media. Mike Tyson mania was everywhere at this time. Nintendo suggested Mike for the Punch-Out after seeing one of his fights. Nintendo of America president Manu Arakawa was so amazed by Mike's power and skill that he wanted this done as soon as possible. Punch-Out by Mike Tyson was launched by Nintendo in '87. It was a hit game that sold over 1 million copies. Many fans consider it as one of the best games ever made. 1988 started with another win over Larry Holmes. However, one of the most famous fights of that year was the richest fight in history at the time between Mike and Michael Spin. While there were arguments favoring Spin to give Mike a tough battle, many people thought that Mike would knock out Spin in the first round. But no one could have predicted what happened next. Mike stopped the fight at 91 seconds. For a lot of fans and reviewers, this was the apex of Mike's boxing greatness. In addition to his fame, he earned numerous awards for his outstanding performance. In '89, he received an honorary doctorate in humane letters from Central State University. Despite dropping out of high school as a junior with everyone he knew gone, Mike was by himself, taking comfort in the arms of strangers. However, on February 7, 1988, he wedded actress Robin Given in a customary wedding at Holy Angels Catholic Church in Chicago. At the time, Given was well known for her work on the sitcom Head of the Class, but soon reports of violence, domestic abuse, and mental instability on Mike's part began to spread, and it became known that his marriage to Given was particularly turbulent. Given claimed she was punched by Mike, who acknowledged it, and "I've ever thrown in my entire life." Given also claimed to have miscarried, but Mike said she was never pregnant, and that she just used that to persuade him to marry her. Despite this, the troubled couple did not have any children. The couple chose to stay in a mansion in Bernardsville, New Jersey during their marriage, and things soon reached a breaking point when they co-hosted an interview with Barbara Walters on App TV's news magazine show 2020. Given called living with Mike torture, pure hell, worse than anything I could possibly imagine. Mike simply watched with a calm and composed expression as Given called the manic depressive on national television, a description that was later confirmed by medical professionals. Given declared a month later that she was getting a divorce from him, who she said was abusive, and the two formally separated 2 months into the new year. They eventually got. Mike was also having career issues. Although it was outside of the ring, Don King and Bill Kahn were fighting about his future contract while his marriage to Robin had hit the rocks, and there was no salvaging it. Despite these personal problems, Mike got into 2 fights in 1989. In February, he squared off against British boxer Frank Bruno, who stunned Mike at the end of the opening round. Finally, easily finished Bruno on the canvas after he pushed out his glass jaw, and then in July, defeated Carl the Truth Williams in the opening round with his personal life in ruins. It looked like Mike had. By 1990, there were reports that he had been training less hard. When the fight with Buster Douglas was announced, it looked like the reports were true. Douglas defeated Mike for the undisputed title in a bout in Tokyo on February 11 that year, and the shock was felt throughout the boxing community because at the Mirage, the only casino to release odds for the bout, the odds were 42-1 with Mike as the favorite to win. But somehow Douglas had a 12-inch reach advantage over Mike, which was just too impossible. In the 8th round, Mike got Douglas with an uppercut and knocked him to the ground, but Douglas bounced back enough to give Mike a brutal thrashing in the next 2 rounds. The referee counted Mike out after Douglas landed a vicious uppercut and a 4-punch flurry of hooks just 35 seconds into the 10th round, knocking Mike down for the first time in his career. This was one of the most shocking surprises in modern sports history. the unbeaten baddest man on the planet, and possibly the most feared boxer in professional boxing at the time, had been beaten, putting an end to Mike's 42-fight unbeaten run. Camp later complained after the fight that Douglas had taken more than 10 seconds to stand up again, and that the count was slow despite the unexpected defeat. Mike claimed that his career-defining moment was being defeated by Douglas. "I needed that fight to make me a better. I view myself in boxing from a bigger angle." He bounced back from the defeat by knocking out Alex Stewart and Henry Tillman in the first round of his next two bouts. The undisputed world heavyweight title, which Evander Holyfield had won from Douglas in his first title defense, was up for grabs after these fights, setting up an elimination battle, and Mike was the top prospect for that title. He went off against Donovan "Razor" Ruck, the number 2 contender in Las Vegas. Ruck was considered one of the hardest punching heavyweights and one of the most dangerous in the world. The majority of the bout was back and forth between Mike and Ruck before referee Richard Steele controversially ended it in favor of Mike. In the 7th round, there were those who weren't happy about the ref's decision, and it led to a brawl after the bout. They had to protect the referee out of the ring. The fight, which many believed to be a matchup between the two greatest heavyweights in the world, was rescheduled to take place in March of that same year, and even though Ruck would be paid more this time, the bout was supposed to be a non-title bout when Mike and Ruck met. In June of that year, he defeated Ruck and won a unanimous decision in 12 rounds. This opened the door for a Mike and Holyfield fight, and the two were set to face off for the uncontested title in November at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. But Mike withdrew due to a rib cartilage injury he suffered during training. But things were about to get worse for Mike. On February 10, 1992, he was found guilty of several crimes, including rape, and given a 6-year prison term. How in producing Desiree Washington, who Mike referred to as a good Christian girl, as a college freshman she won Miss Black Rhode Island, and was chosen as her high school's nicest and most talkative student. When Mike extended an invitation to go out late one evening, Desiree believed she was just meeting a celebrity for the first time, and not just any celebrity, but a celebrity that her family loves and adores, that America loves and adores. She had previously stated that one-night stands were not her thing, and started to feel uneasy when Mike brought up the topic of sex, and she decided to take a bathroom break when Mike allegedly lured her up to his hotel room under the pretense of wanting to talk a little bit. This was when she claimed the horrific sexual assault took place, something Mike denied completely, maintaining his innocence and stating that they had a consensual sexual relationship. However, she testified in court explaining how Mike forced her to have unprotected non-consensual sex. The evidence she had was not shown on TV. However, viewers could hear the hotel room bed making some noise in her labored breathing and strained pleas in the background. Foster, Mike's driver, also stated in court that Mike had lured her to his hotel room, tried to touch her, and then exposed himself in an earlier attempt to sexually attack her. Mike refuted charges that he had deceived Desiree and maintained that she desired to have sex with him. Despite these witnesses, a big portion of the populace supported Mike, but the odds were against him in court. Additional testimony was given by Dr. Thomas Richardson, the emergency room doctor who evaluated Desiree following the assault, and verified that her physical state was compatible with rape. Richardson stated in his testimony that Washington had suffered 2 small vaginal abrasions, consistent with 20-30 of the injuries seen in sexual assault cases, and that in roughly 20,000 cases over a 20-year period, only twice had he ever seen such abrasions following consensual sex. Mike was found guilty of the rape charge following nearly 10 hours of jury consideration. There are those who think everything was against Mike, and there were people who wanted him to appear as bad as possible. Many thought there were too many holes in the story portrayed by the witnesses, including what specifically caused Desert to take off her panty shield, how she was pinned to the bed as Mike had oral sex with her, and where the bruises on the 108B woman were. If Mike was one of the strongest men in the world, Mike would later call his defense lead a horrible lawyer for not picking on these points. Mike got a sentence of 6 years in prison and 4 years on probation on March 26, 1992. In April, he was sent to the Indiana Youth Center, which is now the Plainfield Correctional Facility, where he spent less than 3 years of his sentence before being released in March 1995. After his jail time, defeated Peter McNay and Buster Mady's JRB with ease in his return fights, promoted as He's Back. His first return bout brought in almost $100 million globally. Evander Holyfield, who had retired in 1994 while Mike was in prison, was the opponent Mike tried to protect his title against in the fourth fight of his own comeback. According to Don King and others, Holyfield, a 34-year-old former champion and a massive underdog at the time of the fight, was viewed as a washed-up fighter. However, when Mike faced Holyfield in a title bout called Finally in a shocking turn of events, Holyfield, who was given almost no chance to win by many commentators, defeated Mike via TKO. When the referee stopped the fight in round 11, Holyfield made history by becoming the second boxer to win the heavyweight title 3 times. Mike's camp pushed for a return, which took place at the Las Vegas MGM Grand Garden Arena. This fight had $100 million in revenue and considerably more attention than the previous fight. As the match began, it was clear there was a lot at stake. However, by the end of the third round, Mike was disqualified for biting Holyfield in both ears, ending what would soon become one of the most contentious bouts in contemporary sports. The match was briefly halted when he bit Holyfield for the first time. The bout continued after the referee docked Mike to points. But when the fight began, he bit Holyfield again, earning himself a disqualification and handing Holyfield the win. Near riots broke out in the arena, and multiple people were hurt in the commotion that followed the bout's conclusion and the announcement of the decision. This was the first heavyweight title bout to end in disqualification in more than 50 years. After the fight, a chunk of Holyfield's right ear was discovered on the ring floor, where the first bite had been so severe that it had been removed later. Mike claimed that his actions were a form of payback for Holyfield's frequent unpunished headbutts in their last match. Despite the turn of events, Mike and Holyfield won one of the biggest professional boxing purses, $30 million and $35 million respectively. Mike also apologized to Holyfield for his behavior and asked that he not be permanently barred for the altercation. He wasn't barred, but the Nevada State Boxing Commission deducted $3 million from his earnings as a result of the event, the largest amount that could be legally withdrawn at the time. Took a detour and participated in some WWE skits, making even more money. Clearly, he was back. Indeed, Mike was living large and even chose to marry Monica Turner. They were wed for almost 5 years before Turner chose to file for divorce because of Mike's alleged infidelity during their 5-year marriage, which has neither been forgiven nor condoned. But at least the couple had 2 kids. However, Mike was involved in legal problems once more. When he heard about the accident, Mike flew from Las Vegas to Phoenix. The death of his daughter broke him, said he just didn't know what to do. And for a week after her death, he was using all kinds of drugs, anything he could get his hands on to make him forget the pain. After a while, Mike chose to live his life trying to be good. His daughter's death had completely transformed him. This new Mick went into the cannabis business as a personal goal because, according to him, using cannabis had helped him deal with pain, anxiety, and the difficulties of life after sports. He started promoting the medical and recreational applications of cannabis in an effort to lessen its negative connotations. He invested in everything from pre-rolls to sweets. Also, he started a popular podcast known as Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson and shared his honest views about life with his fans. Many found this movie pretty awesome, as they got to see Mike's new version and grow as a person. Still wasn't done with fighting. It was revealed in July 2020 that he had signed a contract to face former 4-division world champion Roy Jones Jr. in an 8-round exhibition fight. The fight ended in a draw. Many praised Mike's post-retirement form, saying, "He did really great for someone over 50 years." Now, 4 years later, many fans feel the Mike and Jake Paul fight left a lot to be desired, causing many fans to think about Mike's younger years. There are those who question the idea of Mike fighting Jake, thinking it left a stain on Mike's legacy. This devastating new detail has split the internet in two, with some stating that it has absolutely no impact on the achievements of the famous boxer. Do you think anything has changed? And is Mike Tyson no longer one of the greatest boxers that ever lived?